The summer sun beat down on the concrete sidewalk, creating waves of heat that danced in the air. It was one of those days when the city seemed to hold its breath, when even the birds sought refuge in whatever shade they could find. The weatherman had called it the hottest weekend of the year, and for once, he wasn't exaggerating. On the corner of Maple Street and Harrison Avenue, 8-year-old Tiana Jackson carefully arranged bottles of water in a small blue cooler her mom had filled with ice that morning. Her small hands worked with purpose, making sure each bottle was nestled properly to stay cold. Droplets of condensation quickly formed on the plastic as soon as they touched the humid air. "How's it looking down there?" called a voice from above. Tiana looked up, shielding her eyes against the glare of the sun, and saw her mother leaning out of their second-floor apartment window. Mrs. Jackson's hair was pulled back in a colorful scarf, and despite the heat, her smile was as warm as ever. "Almost ready, Mom," Tiana called back, her excitement evident in her voice. "Just making sure everything looks nice." Mrs. Jackson nodded with approval. "I'll be watching from up here. Remember what we talked about?" "Yes, ma'am. Don't leave my spot, be polite to everyone, and count the money twice before making change." Tiana had practiced this little speech several times that morning. Her mother had agreed to let her run the water stand alone, but only if she followed the rules they'd established together. "That's my girl," her mother replied. "I'm just a shout away if you need anything." Tiana gave her mom a thumbs up before returning her attention to her little business setup. Besides the cooler of water bottles, she had a folding table her mother had brought down earlier, a chair that was slightly too big for her, a small cash box with some change inside, and a handmade sign that proclaimed "Ice-cold water, $1" in bright blue and yellow letters. She had spent nearly an hour on that sign the night before, carefully coloring in the letters and adding little water droplets around the edges. The Science Kit catalog sat on the corner of her table, open to the page with the Ultimate Explorer's chemistry set. Tiana ran her finger over the glossy image for what must have been the 100th time. $45. That was how much she needed. She already had $23.17 saved in her special piggy bank, a ceramic turtle her grandfather had given her before he passed away 2 years ago. If she could sell enough water today, maybe, just maybe, she could order the kit by the end of the weekend. Science had always been Tiana's favorite subject in school. Her second-grade teacher, Mrs. Chen, had noticed how Tiana's eyes lit up during their simple experiments with plants and magnets and had given her extra projects to work on. The chemistry set would let her do real experiments at home, make crystals, create color-changing solutions, and learn about chemical reactions. Just thinking about it made her stomach flutter with excitement. A middle-aged man walking his golden retriever was the first to approach her stand. The dog panted heavily in the heat, its tongue lolling out. "Well, what do we have here?" the man asked, smiling at Tiana's setup. Tiana straightened her posture just like her mother had taught her for important occasions. "Ice-cold water, sir. Only $1. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. "You're a lifesaver. Rusty and I have been walking for too long in this heat." He handed Tiana $2. "One for me and, well, one for my four-legged friend here." Tiana carefully placed the money in her cash box and handed the man 2 bottles. "Thank you for your business," she said, the phrase sounding grown-up and professional coming from her small frame. The man chuckled as he twisted open one bottle and poured some water into his cupped hand for the dog to lap up. "You're quite the businesswoman. I could use someone like you at my office." Pride swelled in Tiana's chest as she watched her first customer walk away, already taking a long drink from his own bottle. One sale down, many more to go. As the afternoon wore on, Tiana served several more customers. A jogger who looked like she might collapse from heat exhaustion, an elderly couple who praised her entrepreneurial spirit, and a group of teenagers who each bought a bottle and told her to keep the change. Each sale brought her closer to her goal, and she diligently recorded each transaction in a small notebook her mother had given her. From her window, Mrs. Jackson watched with a mixture of pride and protectiveness. She had hesitated when Tiana first proposed the idea, worried about her daughter sitting alone on the street corner, but their apartment building was in a good neighborhood, and most of the residents knew each other. Mrs. Jackson had grown up in a time and place where children were allowed more independence, and she wanted to foster that same sense of capability in her daughter. Still, she kept her eyes on Tiana and the passing strangers, ready to rush downstairs at the first sign of trouble. Around 3 o'clock, the Johnson twins from the first floor, two 10-year-old boys with boundless energy, stopped by Tiana's stand. "How much have you made?" asked Anthony, the slightly taller of the two, peering curiously at her cash box. "That's private business information," Tiana replied seriously, closing the box with a decisive snap. "What are you saving for?" asked Alejandro, his attention caught by the catalog on the table. Tiana carefully turned the catalog around to show them. "It's a chemistry set. You can make all kinds of cool stuff with it, like slime that changes colors and crystals that grow overnight." "That's pretty cool," admitted Anthony. "We're saving for a new video game, but our mom says we have to earn half ourselves." "You could try washing cars," Tiana suggested. "My cousin makes good money doing that." The boys bought a bottle each, promising to come back if they got thirsty again. As they walked away, Tiana felt a little glow of satisfaction. Not only was she earning money, but she was also making business connections, just like the people her mom worked with. Mrs. Jackson worked as an administrative assistant at a law firm downtown. She often told Tiana stories about the lawyers she worked with and how they networked with clients. "Relationships are everything in business," she would say. Tiana wasn't entirely sure what networking meant, but she liked the idea of making friends while also making money. By 4 o'clock, Tiana had sold almost half of her water bottles. The late afternoon sun was still blazing, and she had to occasionally wipe sweat from her forehead. She had taken to saying, "Beat the heat with a cold treat," to passers-by, a slogan she had come up with on the spot when she noticed people fanning themselves as they walked by. Mr. Rivera, the owner of the corner grocery store a block away, stopped by on his way home. He was a stout man with a thick mustache who always gave Tiana a free piece of candy when she went shopping with her mother. "So, you're my competition now?" he joked, his eyes twinkling. Tiana giggled. "Only for today, Mr. Rivera, and I'm only selling water." "Smart choice on a day like today," he said, handing her $1. "You know, when I was about your age, I sold fruits from my father's farm. That's how I learned about business." "Really?" Tiana's eyes widened. "And now you have your own store." "That's right." Mr. Rivera nodded, taking a long drink from the water bottle. "Start small, dream big. That's my advice to you." After he left, Tiana wrote down his words in her notebook. "Start small, dream big." She liked the sound of that. A young couple pushing a stroller stopped next, buying 3 bottles. The woman praised Tiana's sign, and the man asked if she was planning to study business when she grew up. "Maybe," Tiana answered thoughtfully, "but I really like science. I want to be a chemist or maybe an astronaut." "Why not both?" the woman suggested. "You could be a chemical engineer for NASA." Tiana rolled the possibility around in her mind. A chemical engineer for NASA. That sounded important and exciting. As 5 o'clock approached, Tiana counted her earnings. $37. Combined with her savings, she would have more than enough for the chemistry set, with some left over to put back in her turtle bank. She looked up at her apartment window and gave her mother a thumbs-up sign, then pointed at the money box with excitement. Mrs. Jackson smiled and signaled that she would come down. Tiana began organizing her remaining inventory, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. The day had been a success beyond what she had imagined. Not only had she earned enough for her chemistry set, but she had also learned something about running a business and talking to customers. She was just closing the lid on the cooler when she noticed a woman with a small, fluffy white dog approaching from the direction of the new apartment complex across the street. The woman wore large sunglasses and had her blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Unlike the other passers-by who had either smiled or simply ignored her, this woman seemed to be staring directly at Tiana's stand with a frown on her face. Tiana put on her brightest smile. Maybe the woman was just hot and uncomfortable from the weather. A cold bottle of water might be just the thing to improve her mood. "Ice-cold water for just $1, Tiana called out, pointing to her cooler. "Beat the heat with a cold treat." The woman stopped directly in front of the table, her frown deepening as she looked Tiana up and down. There was something in her expression that made Tiana's smile falter slightly. But she remembered her mother's words about always being professional, even when customers weren't friendly. "Would you like to buy some water?" Tiana asked, her voice slightly quieter now. The woman's response would set in motion a chain of events that would change the course of what had been. Until now, a perfect day. "Do you have a permit for this?" the woman asked, her voice sharp and cold despite the summer heat. Tiana blinked, confused. A permit? Yes, a permit, the woman repeated, speaking slowly as if Tiana couldn't understand English. You can't just set up a business on the sidewalk. There are rules. She tugged slightly on her dog's leash and the small white fluff ball yapped once as if agreeing with its owner. Tiana felt her cheeks grow warm, but not from the sun this time. She wasn't entirely sure what a permit was, but she understood the woman's tone well enough. I'm just selling water bottles, ma'am, she explained politely. It's really hot today. The woman, who had just moved into the new luxury apartments across the street 3 weeks ago, pushed her designer sunglasses to the top of her head. Her eyes narrowed as they scanned Tiana's simple setup. That's not the point. The point is that you need proper authorization. This is a respectable neighborhood, not some kind of flea market. Tiana's stomach tightened into a knot. She glanced up toward her apartment window, but her mother wasn't there. She must already be on her way downstairs. Tiana took a deep breath and tried to remember what her teacher had taught them about conflict resolution. I'm sorry if I'm bothering you, ma'am, Tiana said, her voice smaller than before. I'm just trying to earn money for a science kit. She pointed to the catalog still sitting on the edge of the table. The woman barely glanced at it. I don't care what you're selling or why. What I care about is that you're loitering on public property and conducting an unauthorized business. She waved her hand dismissively at the table. Do your parents know you're out here? Yes, ma'am. My mom is watching from our apartment. She should be down in a minute if you'd like to talk to her. Tiana pointed toward their second-floor window. The woman, Patricia Winters, was her name, though Tiana didn't know this. Scoffed. Well, your mother should know better. There are health codes, business licenses, sales taxes. She looked around, her gaze settling on the apartment building where Tiana lived. Something in her expression shifted, a slight curling of her lip that made Tiana feel even smaller. I'm just selling water, Tiana repeated, fighting to keep her voice steady. A few passers-by had slowed down, observing the interaction with curiosity. And what if someone gets sick from your water? Who's liable then? Patricia demanded. Tiana looked down at her cooler full of sealed, store-bought water bottles, the same brands anyone could buy at Mr. Rivera's corner store. They're just regular water bottles from the store, she explained. That's not the point. Patricia's voice rose sharply. Her dog began to bark again, jumping at the end of its leash. The point is that you can't just do whatever you want because you feel like it. There are procedures. Mrs. Jackson emerged from the apartment building at that moment, quickly taking in the scene before her. She was still wearing her house clothes, comfortable leggings and an oversized t-shirt, but she carried herself with a natural dignity as she approached. Is there a problem here? She asked calmly, placing a protective hand on Tiana's shoulder. Patricia turned to Mrs. Jackson, her posture stiffening. Are you this child's mother? Because if you are, you should know that what she's doing is illegal. Mrs. Jackson's eyebrows rose slightly, but her voice remained level. My daughter is selling water bottles on a hot day to earn money for a science kit. I don't see anything illegal about that. Well, I do, Patricia snapped. No permit, no business license, no health inspection. Not to mention that she's blocking the sidewalk and creating a nuisance. Mrs. Jackson looked pointedly at Tiana's small table, which was set up well away from the main path, leaving plenty of room for pedestrians to pass. I don't see anyone being blocked or bothered except perhaps by this conversation. A couple walking by slowed down, clearly listening now. The man, a tall fellow with salt and pepper hair, nodded hello to Mrs. Jackson, whom he recognized from the building. Patricia noticed the growing audience and seemed to straighten up even more. This isn't about the specific placement of the table. It's about following proper channels. I've just moved into Harbor Point Residences, and I was assured this was a neighborhood that valued order and regulations. Harbor Point? Mrs. Jackson nodded with understanding. The new luxury complex. Well, welcome to the neighborhood, though I'm sorry this is how we're meeting. I can assure you that we've lived here for 6 years. And children selling lemonade or water during the summer has never been an issue. Well, it's an issue for me, Patricia said, pulling out her phone from her designer handbag. And if you won't address it, I'll have to call someone who will. Tiana looked up at her mother, fear creeping into her expression. Mrs. Jackson squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. You're going to call the police because an 8-year-old is selling water bottles? Mrs. Jackson asked, disbelief evident in her tone. If that's what it takes to enforce the rules, yes. Patricia began dialing. This neighborhood is going downhill, and it's because people don't respect basic standards anymore. By now, several people had stopped to watch. Mr. Rivera, who had been on his way back to his store after forgetting something at home, paused at the edge of the small crowd. "Hello, yes. I'd like to report an illegal vendor on the corner of Maple and Harrison," Patricia said into her phone, turning slightly away from Mrs. Jackson and Tiana, but speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "There's someone conducting business without proper permits or authorization." "Yes, that's right. They've set up a table on public property and are selling goods." Mrs. Jackson shook her head in disbelief but remained calm. She bent down to Tiana's level. "It's okay, honey. You haven't done anything wrong. Some people just don't remember what it's like to be a kid with a dream." Tiana nodded, but her earlier excitement had evaporated like water droplets on hot pavement. She began to pack up her things, carefully placing the unsold water bottles back into the cooler. "No, leave it," Mrs. Jackson said gently. "You have as much right to be here as anyone. We'll wait for the police to arrive and explain the situation." Patricia continued her call, her voice growing more dramatic with each passing moment. "Yes, they're refusing to leave." "No, I've explained that it's not allowed. I'm concerned about health code violations and sidewalk obstruction." "No, I don't feel unsafe, but this is clearly contributing to neighborhood decline." The Johnson twins had returned and were watching with wide eyes. "What's happening?" Anthony whispered to Tiana. "Why is that lady so mad about water?" Tiana shrugged, trying to put on a brave face. "She says I need a permit." "That's dumb," Alejandro declared loud enough for Patricia to hear. "Our mom lets us buy from lemonade stands all the time." Patricia shot them a stern look before returning to her call. "Yes, I'll wait until officers arrive." "Thank you." She ended the call and turned back to Mrs. Jackson. "The police will be here shortly. Perhaps next time you'll think twice before encouraging your daughter to break the law." Mrs. Jackson took a deep breath, clearly choosing her words carefully. "I encourage my daughter to be entrepreneurial, to work toward her goals and to contribute positively to her community. All valuable lessons that I'm proud to teach her. Those lessons should include following proper procedures," Patricia insisted. More neighbors had gathered now, forming a loose circle around the scene. Someone was recording with their phone, though they tried to be discreet about it. "What's going on here?" asked Mrs. Chen, Tiana's second-grade teacher, who happened to be walking by with groceries. Before Mrs. Jackson could answer, Mr. Rivera stepped forward. "This woman called the police on little Tiana for selling water bottles." Mrs. Chen looked shocked. "Tiana is one of my most responsible students." "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." Patricia turned to the newcomer with irritation. "There's no misunderstanding. There are rules about street vending, and they apply to everyone regardless of age. Even on the hottest day of the year," someone in the crowd muttered. "When she's just trying to help people stay hydrated?" "It's not about the water," Patricia insisted, though her voice had lost some of its earlier conviction as she noted the disapproving looks from the growing audience. "It's about following proper channels." "Proper channels for an 8-year-old's water stand," Mrs. Chen repeated slowly, the absurdity of the situation evident in her tone. She set down her grocery bags and approached Tiana. "How's the business going today before this interruption?" Tiana's face brightened a bit at seeing her favorite teacher. "I made $37. Enough for my chemistry set with some left over." "That's wonderful," Mrs. Chen said enthusiastically. "I knew you'd find a way to get it. I can't wait to see what experiments you'll do." The positive interaction seemed to fuel Patricia's indignation. "This is exactly the problem. You're all encouraging her to think rules don't matter." "No," Mrs. Jackson corrected firmly. "We're encouraging her to think that kindness, initiative, and community support matter. Something you might want to consider." A police cruiser pulled up to the curb and 2 officers stepped out. One was a tall woman with her hair pulled back in a tight bun. The other was a younger man with a friendly face. They surveyed the scene. A small girl with a water stand, a growing crowd of neighbors, and a visibly agitated woman with a tiny dog. Patricia immediately stepped toward them. "I'm the one who called. This illegal vendor refuses to pack up and leave despite being informed of the regulations." The female officer looked from Patricia to Tiana, then to the small water stand. "Ma'am, you called 911 about a child selling water bottles?" "Yes," Patricia confirmed. "It's a matter of principle. Rules exist for a reason." The male officer approached Tiana's table and looked at her setup. How much for a bottle? He asked with a kind smile. $1, sir, Tiana replied, her voice barely above a whisper. He pulled $1 from his pocket and handed it to her. I'll take one, please. It's certainly hot enough today. Patricia's mouth fell open in shock. Officer? Aren't you going to do something about this? The female officer turned to her with a professionally neutral expression. Ma'am, there are no city ordinances being violated here. Children's stands like this are generally allowed as temporary activities, especially in residential areas. But the health codes, Patricia began. She's selling sealed, commercially produced water bottles, the officer interrupted, nodding toward the cooler. There are no health code concerns. Patricia's face flushed red. So you're just going to let this continue? What about the sidewalk obstruction? The male officer, now sipping his water, looked pointedly at the clear pathway around the small table. I don't see any obstruction, do you, Officer Rodriguez? None whatsoever, his partner confirmed. She turned back to Patricia. Ma'am, I should inform you that misuse of emergency services can result in a fine. 911 is for emergencies only. The crowd of neighbors, which had grown to about a dozen people, murmured with satisfaction. Someone in the back clapped briefly. Patricia stood speechless for a moment, her dog whining at her feet. Then, with a huff, she put her sunglasses back on. This is unbelievable. I'll be filing a complaint with the city council. The standards in this neighborhood are clearly not what I was led to believe. With that, she tugged on her dog's leash and marched back toward the Harbor Point complex, her heels clicking aggressively on the pavement. As she walked away, Tiana looked up at the officers. Am I really allowed to sell water? Officer Rodriguez smiled. Absolutely. You keep doing what you're doing, sweetheart. The tension in the air dissipated, replaced by a sense of community solidarity. But as the crowd began to disperse and Mrs. Jackson thanked the officers, no one noticed a nearby resident had captured the entire incident on video. A video that was already being uploaded to the internet, where it would soon take on a life of its own. 10 minutes. That's all it took for Lisa Dawson's shaky cell phone video to begin its journey across the internet. Lisa, who lived in the apartment directly above the Jacksons, had captured the entire confrontation from the moment Patricia questioned Tiana's permit to the police officer's level-headed response. She hadn't planned to share it widely, just with a few friends in their neighborhood group chat, but her college-aged son had other ideas. Mom, people need to see this, he insisted after watching the clip over her shoulder. This is exactly the kind of thing that goes viral. Lisa hesitated. I don't know, David. I don't want to cause more trouble for Tiana and her mom. It's not going to cause trouble for them, David explained, already downloading the video from his mother's phone. It's going to show everyone what happened. Trust me, this is important. With a few quick taps, David uploaded the 3-minute clip to his social media accounts. His caption was simple. Woman calls police on 8-year-old black girl selling water bottles during heat wave. Watch how the officers responded. Water while black. You're doing it right. Outside on the street corner, unaware of the digital storm brewing, the small crowd around Tiana's water stand had transformed into a celebration of sorts. The 2 police officers remained on scene, not because of any concerns, but because they were enjoying the unexpected community gathering. I can't believe someone actually called the police over this, Officer Rodriguez said to Mrs. Jackson, shaking her head in disbelief. We deal with real emergencies every day. This is ridiculous. Unfortunately, it's not that surprising, Mrs. Jackson replied quietly, making sure Tiana couldn't overhear. My daughter has to learn these lessons early. Officer Rodriguez's expression softened with understanding. I know. My parents had similar conversations with me. She glanced over at Tiana, who was now excitedly selling water bottles to a line of neighbors who had suddenly developed a powerful thirst. She seems resilient. She is, Mrs. Jackson agreed with pride. But she shouldn't have to be, not about this, not at 8 years old. Across the street, Mrs. Chen approached with 2 neighbors in tow.
Tiana, look who I found.
Dr. Wilson from the Community College Science Department and his wife. Tiana's eyes widened as she recognized the tall man with wire-rimmed glasses who had given a presentation on chemistry during her school's career day last month. Hello, Dr. Wilson, she said excitedly. Hello, Tiana, he replied with a warm smile. Mrs. Chen tells me you're raising money for a chemistry set. That's wonderful. We need more young scientists. Yes, sir, Tiana nodded eagerly. I want to do experiments at home just like you showed us at school. Dr. Wilson's wife, a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, reached into her purse. We'd like to buy water for everyone in our summer chemistry camp. That's 20 bottles, please, Tiana gasped. 20? But I only have 15 left. Well, then we'll take all 15, Mrs. Wilson decided. And here's payment for 20 anyway. She handed Tiana a $20 bill. But that's not, Tiana began, her brow furrowing. It's called a donation, Dr. Wilson explained. Think of it as an investment in future science. Back in Lisa's apartment, her phone began buzzing nonstop. The neighborhood group chat had exploded with responses to the video, but more surprisingly, David's post was gathering attention far beyond their local community. Mom, it's getting shared like crazy, David reported, refreshing the page to watch the numbers climb. 1,000 views already. People are tagging news outlets. Lisa put a hand to her mouth. Oh my, I hope I didn't do something wrong by recording it. You didn't, David assured her. This is public space and people need to see this stuff happening. How else will things change? Within minutes, Lisa's phone rang with a call from a number she didn't recognize. Hesitantly, she answered. Hello, is this Lisa Dawson? A professional-sounding voice asked. This is Jennifer Harris from Channel 6 News. We've seen the video you uploaded of the incident in your neighborhood today. Would you be willing to provide a statement? Lisa nearly dropped her phone in surprise. How did you get my number? Your son tagged you in his post, the reporter explained. We're interested in covering this story for our evening broadcast. Is the little girl still at her water stand? We'd like to send a crew over, with permission from her parents, of course. Yes, she's still there, Lisa confirmed, looking out her window at the growing crowd below. But you should really talk to her mother about any interviews. In the Harbor Point luxury apartment complex across the street, Patricia Winters stormed into her immaculate condo, her small dog trotting behind her. She was still fuming from the encounter, particularly from what she perceived as the police officer's dismissive attitude. Can you believe it, Maxwell? She said to her dog as she unclipped his leash. They completely undermined my legitimate concerns. This neighborhood is going to go downhill fast if people don't start enforcing basic standards. Patricia worked as a senior executive at Communicare Health Foundation, one of the city's largest nonprofit healthcare organizations. Their mission statement, which Patricia had helped craft herself, emphasized serving all community members with dignity and respect. The irony of this was lost on her as she pulled out her laptop to draft a formal complaint to the city council. She was halfway through an email detailing the disturbing lack of code enforcement when her phone rang. It was her colleague, the foundation's public relations director. Patricia, have you seen the video? He asked without preamble, his voice tense. What video? Patricia asked, distracted by her email. The video of you calling the police on a little girl selling water. It's all over social media. People are identifying you as our chief community engagement officer. This is a PR nightmare. Patricia felt her stomach drop. What are you talking about? How could anyone have a video already? Someone filmed the whole thing. It's got thousands of views and shares, and news outlets are picking it up. I've already received calls from 3 reporters asking for comment. Patricia quickly opened her social media app and felt the blood drain from her face. There she was, in high definition, pointing angrily at Tiana's small water stand. The comments beneath the video were a tsunami of outrage. But I was just trying to enforce proper procedures, she whispered, more to herself than to her colleague. Patricia, I need you to listen carefully, the PR director said firmly. Do not post anything online. Do not make any public statements. We need to meet with the executive team immediately to discuss how to handle this. As Patricia hung up the phone, another call came in, this one from the CEO of the foundation himself. The seriousness of the situation began to dawn on her. Back at the water stand, a Channel 6 news van had pulled up to the curb. Mrs. Jackson was initially hesitant about having Tiana interviewed, but ultimately agreed after the reporter promised to focus on the positive community response rather than the negative incident. We don't want to dwell on the unpleasant parts, Mrs. Jackson explained. Tiana's had enough of that for one day. The reporter, a warm-voiced woman with a gentle approach, knelt down to Tiana's level. So, Tiana, I understand you're raising money for something special. Can you tell our viewers about it? Tiana, who had quickly recovered her usual confidence, held up her science catalog. I'm saving for this chemistry set. I want to be a scientist when I grow up. Maybe work for NASA or find a cure for cancer. The cameraman gave a thumbs up, signaling that he'd captured the sweet moment. The reporter then turned to Officer Rodriguez, who had agreed to a brief statement. In today's climate, we're trying to build better relationships with our communities, the officer explained professionally. That means recognizing the difference between actual public safety concerns and, well, situations like this one. As the interview continued, people from all over the neighborhood continued to arrive, many having seen the rapidly spreading video. Some brought their children to meet Tiana. Others just wanted to buy water in solidarity, and a few arrived with small gifts. A science magazine, a book of simple experiments, even a junior microscope still in its packaging. Mr. Rivera returned with a new handwritten sign that read Future Scientists Water Stand, approved by the community, and carefully taped it to the front of Tiana's table. The Johnson twins had recruited several of their friends and were now acting as unofficial security, directing traffic around the growing crowd and offering to carry purchased water bottles for elderly neighbors. Mrs. Chen had started an impromptu science lesson for the gathered children, using the heat of the day to explain evaporation and the water cycle. Even Dr. Wilson joined in, demonstrating how to use water bottles as makeshift magnifying glasses. Across the street, Patricia watched the scene unfold from her third-floor window, her face pale. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications and calls, but she couldn't bring herself to answer any of them. The jubilant community gathering looked like a festival from her vantage point, all sparked by her actions just minutes ago. Her dog Maxwell whined at her feet, sensing her distress. Patricia absent-mindedly reached down to pet him, her mind racing with the potential fallout. Her carefully cultivated professional reputation, her position at the foundation, her standing in her new community, all suddenly at risk. On her coffee table, her laptop displayed an email draft she would never send. Instead, a new message had appeared in her inbox from the foundation's board of directors, with the ominous subject line, "Emergency meeting required attendance." The Channel 6 news reporter was wrapping up her segment, capturing footage of the diverse group of neighbors who had come together in support of one small girl with big dreams. What began as a confrontation has transformed into a celebration, she summarized for the camera. In less than an hour, this 8-year-old scientist-to-be has sold out of water bottles, exceeded her fundraising goal, and brought an entire community together on the hottest day of the year. Tiana beamed at the camera, her earlier anxiety forgotten in the wave of support. "I'm going to order my chemistry set tonight," she announced proudly. As the reporter signed off, Mrs. Jackson put an arm around her daughter's shoulders and whispered, "I am so proud of you." Tiana looked up at her mother. "For selling all the water?" Mrs. Jackson shook her head. "For handling a hard situation with grace. That's more important than any sales goal." Neither of them knew just how far the ripples from this afternoon would spread, or how quickly karma would come for the woman who had tried to shut down a child's dream on the hottest day of the year. By evening, the neighborhood celebration around Tiana's water stand had finally wound down. The summer sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the empty coolers and folding table that Mrs. Jackson was now collapsing. Tiana counted her earnings one final time, spreading the bills and coins across her bedspread with wide-eyed disbelief. $273.45, she announced to her mother, who was sitting at the edge of the bed. "I only needed $45 for my chemistry set." Mrs. Jackson smiled, though her expression carried a hint of something more complicated. Pride mixed with a mother's worry about the day's events. "Well, honey, now you can get some extra supplies too, or save for something bigger. Maybe a telescope," Tiana suggested excitedly. "Or I could donate some to the animal shelter where we got Pepper." Their family cat, hearing his name, stretched lazily at the foot of the bed. "That's very thoughtful," Mrs. Jackson said, her worry giving way to pride at her daughter's generous nature. "We can look into both options tomorrow. For now, I think we've had enough excitement for one day." As Tiana carefully placed her earnings in her turtle bank, her mother's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Lisa Dawson upstairs. Turn on Channel 6 News right now. Mrs. Jackson grabbed the remote and switched on the small television in Tiana's bedroom. They were just in time to catch the lead story. Our top story tonight, the anchor began, her expression serious. A video showing a woman calling police on an 8-year-old girl selling water bottles has gone viral, sparking outrage nationwide. The incident, which occurred in our city earlier today, has already been viewed over 2 million times on social media. Tiana's eyes grew wide as her own face appeared on the screen, followed by footage from the confrontation that afternoon. "That's me. I'm on TV," she exclaimed, her expression a mixture of excitement and bewilderment. Mrs. Jackson watched silently as the news segment continued, showing clips from the interview they'd given earlier, now interspersed with comments from civil rights advocates and community leaders. The woman in the video has been identified as Patricia Winters, Chief Community Engagement Officer at CommuniCare Health Foundation. The reporter continued. The organization has issued a brief statement saying they are aware of the situation and taking it very seriously. Winters has not responded to requests for comment. Across town, in the conference room of CommuniCare Health Foundation, Patricia Winters sat rigidly at a long table, surrounded by grim-faced board members and executives. The company's logo, a stylized handshake inside a heart, seemed to mock her from the wall behind the CEO's head. 2 million views, Patricia, the CEO said, his voice carefully measured. 2 million people have watched you call the police on a child selling water bottles. A child whose family lives in one of the very communities our foundation claims to serve. I was just concerned about, Patricia began. Save it, the CEO cut her off. We've all seen the video. There was no concern there, just entitlement. He gestured to a tablet in front of him, which displayed a social media page. The hashtag CommuniCareless is trending. We've lost 3 major donors in the last hour. The PR director slid several printed news articles across the table. The Washington Post has picked it up. So has the New York Times. They're calling it Water Bottle Karen and linking it to a pattern of similar incidents across the country. Patricia felt her chest tighten. I wasn't thinking of it that way. I was just concerned about regulations and that's exactly the problem, the HR director interjected. Your role is literally Chief Community Engagement Officer, yet you showed a complete lack of cultural awareness and basic compassion. How can you possibly lead our community outreach after this? The CEO nodded gravely. Patricia, we've called this meeting to inform you that, effective immediately, you are being placed on administrative leave pending a full review of this incident. Patricia's mouth fell open. Administrative leave? Over a misunderstanding about a water stand? No, the CEO corrected firmly. Over a very public display of behavior that directly contradicts our organization's values and mission. The board will meet tomorrow to discuss next steps. For now, I need your badge and laptop. As Patricia handed over her company property with trembling hands, her phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had discovered her personal social media accounts and was sharing them widely. Her inbox was flooding with messages from strangers, some expressing disappointment, others much more hostile. Meanwhile, back in their apartment, Tiana and her mother continued watching the news coverage in stunned silence. The segment had expanded to include interviews with other families who had experienced similar incidents. It happens all the time, said one father, standing next to his young son with a lemonade stand. People just don't see our kids the same way. The anchor then turned to a different story. In a heartwarming twist to this troubling incident, social media users have started a GoFundMe campaign titled Science Dreams Matter for young Tiana Jackson. The campaign, meant to help fund her interest in science, has already raised over $5,000 in just 3 hours. $5,000? Tiana gasped, jumping up from her bed. For me? Mrs. Jackson was equally shocked. This is a lot to process, she said quietly, pulling her daughter close. Let's take things one step at a time, okay? Just then, there was a knock at their apartment door. Mrs. Jackson opened it to find Lisa Dawson standing there with her son David. I'm so sorry, Lisa blurted out immediately. I had no idea it would blow up like this. David just wanted to share it with a few friends, and then, it's not your fault, Mrs. Jackson assured her, though her voice betrayed her exhaustion. Come in, please. David, looking both excited and apologetic, showed them his phone. The video has been shared by 3 celebrities now. And a major science supply company just commented that they want to send Tiana a professional lab kit. A real lab kit. Tiana's eyes lit up despite the chaos swirling around her. Like the ones in school? Mrs. Jackson sank onto the couch feeling overwhelmed. This is all happening so fast. Do you want me to help manage some of this? Lisa offered. I work in social media marketing. I can help filter through the messages, make sure only the positive stuff gets through. Mrs. Jackson nodded gratefully. That would be wonderful, thank you. As Lisa and David settled in to help sort through the flood of notifications and offers, Tiana's second-grade teacher, Mrs. Chen, called. I just saw the news, she said when Mrs. Jackson answered. How are you two holding up? We're adjusting, Mrs. Jackson replied honestly. It's a lot for Tiana to process. The reason I'm calling, Mrs. Chen continued, is that Dr. Wilson has a proposal. The science department at the community college wants to offer Tiana a spot in their summer science program for gifted children. It's normally for middle schoolers, but they're making an exception. Mrs. Jackson relayed this information to Tiana, whose face broke into a huge smile despite the emotional day. Can I go, Mom, please? We'll discuss it, Mrs. Jackson promised. Unable to resist smiling at her daughter's persistent enthusiasm for science, even in the midst of all this unexpected attention, across town, Patricia Winters sat alone in her luxury apartment, blinds drawn against the evening light. Her dog Maxwell whined softly, sensing her distress. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications, but she had stopped checking them after reading one message that simply said, How does it feel to be the most hated woman in America tonight? The phrase echoed in her mind as she poured herself a glass of wine with shaking hands. Most hated woman in America. Over a water stand. How had things escalated so quickly? On her television, muted but still visible, she could see her own face on the news, a still image from the video, her finger pointing accusingly at Tiana's small table. Beneath her image ran the caption, Executive on leave after viral video shows her calling police on child entrepreneur. Patricia unmuted the TV just in time to hear the anchor say, Coming up after the break, CommuniCare Health Foundation's past controversies and how this incident fits a pattern of disconnect with the communities they claim to serve. She quickly turned off the television, unable to bear more. Her phone rang, her sister calling from across the country. Trish, her sister said when she answered. I just saw the news. What on earth were you thinking? I don't know, Patricia admitted, her voice small. I was just irritated about the rules not being followed. I didn't think about how it looked. Well, it looks terrible, her sister said bluntly.
Mom and Dad raised us better than that. Patricia felt tears welling up.
What am I supposed to do now? I'll probably lose my job. I can't even go outside without being recognized. Her sister was silent for a moment. You need to make this right, Trish. Not for your job or your reputation, but because it's the right thing to do. That little girl didn't deserve what happened today. As the conversation ended, Patricia walked to her window and carefully peered through the blinds. The street corner where Tiana's stand had been was empty now, the community celebration long dispersed. But the impact of what had happened there continued to ripple outward, changing lives, including her own, in ways she never could have imagined a few short hours ago. In Tiana's apartment, the excitement had finally settled enough for bedtime. As Mrs. Jackson tucked her daughter in, Tiana asked a question that caught her off guard. Mom, do you think that lady is okay? The one who called the police? Mrs. Jackson paused, surprised by her daughter's concern for the person who had caused such a difficult day. I don't know, honey. Why do you ask? Tiana shrugged her small shoulders. Everyone's being really mean about her online. David showed me some of the comments. It feels not right, even though what she did wasn't nice. Mrs. Jackson sat on the edge of the bed, moved by her daughter's compassion. That's very thoughtful of you, Tiana. Sometimes when people do hurtful things, other people want to hurt them back. But that usually just creates more hurt, doesn't it? Tiana nodded solemnly. Maybe she just needs to learn about being nice. Like when Tommy used to take my crayons in kindergarten, and you told me he probably just needed to learn how to share. Mrs. Jackson smiled, gently stroking her daughter's hair. You're right. Maybe that's exactly what she needs. What neither of them could know was that across town, Patricia Winters was coming to the same realization, that she had a lot to learn, and that the lessons were just beginning. 3 days after what social media had dubbed Watergate, life on Maple Street had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The corner where Tiana's water stand had stood was now adorned with a small, hand-painted sign that read "Community Matters" and was surrounded by potted plants contributed by various neighbors. For Tiana, the whirlwind continued. The GoFundMe campaign had surpassed $15,000 before Mrs. Jackson asked Lisa to pause it, overwhelmed by the generosity but concerned about the attention it was bringing to her young daughter. The promised science kit had arrived, along with additional equipment from 3 different science supply companies eager to support the young entrepreneur. Their small living room now resembled a junior laboratory, with Tiana spending hours conducting experiments under her mother's watchful eye. Add 3 drops of the red liquid to the blue one, Tiana instructed the Johnson twins, who had become her faithful lab assistants. The boys watched in awe as the solutions changed color upon mixing. "That's so cool," Alejandro exclaimed. "What does it mean?" "It means the pH is changing," Tiana explained proudly, repeating what she had learned from the instruction manual. "pH measures how acidic or basic a solution is," Mrs. Jackson observed from the kitchen doorway, her heart full but her mind still processing the events that had led to this moment. The chemistry set that had started it all, the one that would have cost just $45, now seemed like a distant memory amid the flood of scientific equipment that had arrived at their door. Her phone rang. It was Dr. Wilson from the community college. "Mrs. Jackson, I'm calling to confirm Tiana's spot in our Young Scientists program. We're absolutely thrilled to have her join us, thank you," Mrs. Jackson replied. "She's very excited. But I have to ask, is this special treatment because of what happened? Because I don't want her to think that viral videos are the way to get opportunities in life." Dr. Wilson chuckled. "I understand your concern, but I can assure you, we've been looking to diversify our program for years. Tiana's incident just brought her to our attention. Her obvious passion for science is why we want her. In fact, we're hoping to use some of the attention this has received to fund scholarships for more children from her neighborhood." After ending the call, Mrs. Jackson checked her email to find yet another interview request, this time from a major morning talk show. She sighed, filing it away with the dozens of others she hadn't yet responded to. The attention was becoming overwhelming, and she worried about its effect on Tiana, who remained remarkably unfazed but who was, after all, only 8 years old. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Officer Rodriguez standing there in casual clothes, a colorful gift bag in hand. "I hope I'm not intruding," the officer said with a warm smile. "I'm off duty today and wanted to check in on Tiana and bring her this." She held up the bag. "That's very kind," Mrs. Jackson said, genuinely touched. "Please come in. She's giving a science demonstration to the neighbor boys." Officer Rodriguez laughed as she entered and saw the makeshift lab setup. "I see she's putting her new equipment to good use." Tiana looked up from her experiment, her face lighting up. "Officer Rodriguez, look at all my science stuff. I can do real experiments now." "I see that," the officer replied, clearly impressed. "And I brought you something else for your collection." She handed Tiana the gift bag. Inside was a children's book titled "Women in Science, 50 Fearless Pioneers Who Changed the World." Tiana's eyes widened as she flipped through the colorful pages. "This is amazing. Thank you." She immediately began showing the Johnson twins the profiles of famous scientists. Officer Rodriguez turned to Mrs. Jackson. "How are you holding up with all of this attention?" Mrs. Jackson sighed. "It's a lot. Mostly positive, but still overwhelming. I'm trying to keep things as normal as possible for Tiana." "That's wise," the officer nodded. "And have you heard anything from the woman who called the police?" "Patricia Winters?" "No, nothing directly," Mrs. Jackson replied, "though I've seen the news about her being placed on leave. The whole thing has gotten so out of hand." What Mrs. Jackson didn't know was that across town, Patricia Winters was sitting in her therapist's office, trying to make sense of how her life had imploded in the span of 3 days. "I've lost my job," Patricia said, her voice hollow. "The board voted yesterday. They called it irreconcilable differences with the organization's mission. And my landlord at Harbor Point has asked me to consider breaking my lease early due to community concerns." Her therapist, a woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, listened attentively. That's a significant amount of loss to process. How are you feeling about it? Patricia stared out the window for a long moment. The thing is, they're not wrong. I keep replaying that day in my mind. What was I really upset about? A child selling water? Or was it something else entirely? What do you think it might have been? The therapist prompted gently. I think... Patricia paused, choosing her words carefully. I think I saw Tiana and her mother as not belonging in my new neighborhood. I was so focused on protecting the property values and the standards that I completely missed the actual community that was already there. Her voice broke. And the worst part is I was literally the chief community engagement officer. My entire job was about building bridges, not walls. The therapist nodded, recognizing that as an important first step. What are you thinking about doing now? Patricia took a deep breath. I've been getting hate mail, death threats even. People have been calling me horrible names online. But then I saw an interview with Tiana's mother where she actually discouraged people from attacking me. She said her daughter was concerned about how I was being treated. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. This child, who I called the police on, was worried about me. It made me realize I need to make this right, not just hide away in shame. Later that evening, Patricia sat at her kitchen table drafting what felt like the most important letter of her life. Her dog Maxwell dozed at her feet as she carefully considered each word, crumpled several versions, and started again. When she finally had a version that felt right, she sealed it in an envelope, wrote Tiana's name on the front and added her address, which she had obtained from a mutual acquaintance at the Harbor Point Management Office. The next morning, Tiana was helping her mother sort through the mountain of mail they'd received, cards, letters, and small packages from well-wishers across the country, when she came across an envelope with just her name written in neat handwriting. Mom, what's this one? She asked, holding it up. Mrs. Jackson examined it. I'm not sure, honey. Do you want me to open it first? Tiana shook her head. I can do it. She carefully tore open the envelope and pulled out a handwritten letter. It's from the lady who called the police, she said, surprised. Mrs. Jackson moved closer, her protective instincts flaring. What does it say? Tiana read aloud. Dear Tiana, my name is Patricia Winters. I am the woman who called the police on your water stand last Saturday. I am writing to say I am deeply sorry for what I did. There is no excuse for how I treated you. You were doing something good and helpful, and I was wrong to try to stop you. The letter continued, explaining in simple, direct language that Patricia had been doing a lot of thinking about why she acted the way she did and how she was working to learn from her mistakes. She mentioned that she had donated all of her remaining savings to the community college's new Young Scientists Scholarship Fund, which would help children from Tiana's neighborhood attend science programs. I know that saying sorry doesn't fix what happened, Tiana read from the final paragraph, but I wanted you to know that you have taught me an important lesson about jumping to conclusions and about what really matters in a community. I wish you all the best with your science dreams. Sincerely, Patricia Winters. Tiana looked up at her mother. She sounds really sad. Mrs. Jackson nodded, conflicted but moved by the sincerity of the letter. It sounds like she's learned something important from all this. 2 weeks later, the community center near Maple Street hosted its first ever Young Scientist Fair, sponsored by the community college and organized by Dr. Wilson and Mrs. Chen. Tables lined the main hall, each staffed by a child demonstrating a different science project. Tiana's table, featuring experiments on water purification, was the most popular, drawing crowds of visitors curious to meet the girl who had become a local celebrity. In the back of the room, a woman in a baseball cap and sunglasses watched quietly. Patricia had debated whether to come at all, but had ultimately decided she needed to see the positive outcomes that had emerged from that fateful day. She had been volunteering at the community center for the past week, helping with administrative tasks and deliberately staying in the background. As the fair wound down, Patricia was stacking chairs when she found herself face to face with Mrs. Jackson. I thought that might be you, Mrs. Jackson said calmly. Tiana recognized you earlier. Patricia froze, her heart racing. I hope it was okay that I came. I've been volunteering here, trying to actually get to know the community this time. Mrs. Jackson studied her for a moment. Your letter meant a lot to Tiana. She's been carrying it around in her science notebook. Really? Patricia asked, surprised and touched. Mrs. Jackson nodded. She says it reminds her that people can change and learn new things. That's what science is all about, after all. Learning and growing. From across the room, Tiana spotted them talking and made her way over, carrying a small vial of purified water. "Hi, Ms. Winters," she said with remarkable composure. "Do you want to see my experiment?" "I'm showing how you can filter dirty water to make it clean again." Patricia felt tears prick her eyes at the simple, profound metaphor. "I would love that, Tiana. Thank you for showing me." As the young scientist led the way back to her table, Patricia caught Mrs. Jackson's eye over Tiana's head. The mother gave a small nod, not quite forgiveness, but an acknowledgement of the difficult, necessary work of healing and growth. Outside the community center, a new sign had been erected next to the entrance. Harbor Heights Science Academy, coming fall 2026. The building, funded by donations that had poured in following Tiana's story, would provide after-school science programs for children throughout the neighborhood. Sometimes karma comes in the form of consequences, but sometimes, if we're lucky, it comes in the form of chances. Chances to learn, to make amends, and to build something better than what existed before.